Who haven't seen my face before, my name is Eric Noggle, and I'm a research officer with MFO. I handle a lot of quantitative research for our research projects. So I was the fingers in the state program behind the results in Zambia that have done some of the work that you're going to see up here around what I'm about to talk about. And I think the point the guy and I want to get to in this last 10 minutes of presenting is to move us from the space where we're talking about sort of what's the value proposition of embedded education, what is it doing for these organizations on the ground, and move us to the part of the conversation where we're addressing these issues that people listed on the back of the board, which is there's this issue with pushing financial education to scale, right? So we want to talk about that and talk about how embedded education, from our eyes, is a solution to that problem. And the place we want to start is this issue of the financial capability gap, right? In 2012, Monitor released a report and basically said that there were 600 million people that have access to formal financial services somehow. But of those 600 million, only 100 million had ever received any kind of financial education training. Most of that training was induction trainings when they're joining a loan group. And as many of you know from experience, those are pretty narrow in focus. We don't get into a lot of depth around how to do broad money management and how to use a lot of services, right? That gap, we believe, is only going to widen, right? We're going to extend financial inclusion, and as we do that, we're going to have more people that haven't been educated. And in addition to that, the services that we're offering are only getting more complicated. I mean, we've all heard about the panacea that is digital financial service, right? And those are complicated systems. And as we've rolled them out, we've seen that even though we have millions and millions of subscribers, only about a third of them remain active, right? And we know that's the result of a variety of challenges. Sometimes it's product design, sometimes we're going out and we're vacuuming up registrations, essentially. But financial capability is an issue there, too. Right? These are new technologies that people need to adopt, right? And that adoption process has challenges that we need to face. If you can go to the next slide. Now, addressing all those challenges within financial education, educating people so they can manage their money better and use those services is a very expensive proposition as it stands. Right? The same Monitor report estimated that it would cost somewhere between $7 and $10 billion to extend financial education to those 500 million people who haven't had access to it already. Right? And as we know, we live in a generous country, in a generous industry. People donate money to deal with this issue, but I can guarantee you there's not $7 billion sitting around that we're going to be able to get from donors and philanthropists that's going to be able to address that issue. So we have to come up with some different option, right? And embedded education we think works, right? But we also think that it's cost effective. We use some of our estimates from the Consumer Education Project with branchless banking in Zambia and Philippines and India for these estimates. We used some other estimates from other projects that we had, and we guessed that for a medium-sized MFI, you could deliver an embedded education program for roughly $1 a person, maybe a little bit more. So if you're talking about 500 million people, we think that we're in the realm of $500 million, a fraction of what it would cost to do this with traditional methods. Right? And that's because we can leverage those contact points within organizations. Right? That is the backbone to being able to do this. And $500 million is great. It's a fraction of the total cost, right, that city's estimating. But $500 million is not an insignificant sum. If it were insignificant, I would just ask everyone to open up their checkbooks. We'd pass around the bucket, right, and we get moving on this. So we can't do that. So where are we going to get the money to pay for this, right, to solve this challenge? If you can jump to the next slide for me. Well, the answer is from the financial service providers themselves. We looked at about 650 financial service providers using data from the mix. And from those 650, we found that they were roughly together writing off $1.4 billion a year. Right? That is a lot of money to be left on the table. And they're leaving it on the table everywhere. There's $100 million that's being lost by just 10 MFIs in India. You got another $500 million sitting in Africa and Asia. In Latin America alone, where penetration is so high and loan amounts are high, we're just under $1 billion in write-offs. Right? That is a significant amount of money to be losing. Right? So what's the value proposition from the perspective of the financial service provider? We know it from the perspective of trying to serve clients. Right? We think that this can add value to their life. Well, for the financial service provider, traditionally, financial education is sort of viewed as a cost center. Right? We hear these questions about how much does it cost to deliver this, right? That matters. That cost to them matters. And so when a donor comes along and says we have money, or an organization like MFO comes along and says we can do this project for you, right? That's tantalizing and moves the cost of this program outside of their operations. But for us to really deliver value to them and to make this a scalable proposition, they need to have skin in the game. And we think we can make them see that by showing them that there's a bottom line impact that embedded education can have. Right? Imagine if you could save 10% of those write-offs. Right? That's a lot of money. That's $140 million that we're leaving on the table, right? That we can take back using the embedded education model. The trick, though, is that we have to change perceptions about how we finance this. Right? This is not paying for financial education and doing it because it has bottom line impact. That's a new phenomenon, right? And it's going to take a new financing method to do that. Right? We believe that financing method is the pay-for-performance model. And if you could go to the next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Guy. And Guy's going to share with us a little bit about how we think we can move this to scale with this method.
So the challenge that we have in delivering financial education and financing it is that it has traditionally been grant funded. And for the financial service provider, grant funding is essentially free money. So we've got to work out how do we compete with free. If we're going into the market, as MFO has done and is doing, we're offering our financial education services, and we're trying to convince managers that they should pay us X number of dollars to fund a financial education program, and we're telling them it's going to have a good impact. And some of them buy that, and they will hire us as consultants to do that work. But for others, they're still not sure. And so one way in which we can deal with this issue and scale financial education is to say, we're going to identify with you, financial service provider, what challenges you're facing, what problems you're facing. So we're going to do some initial research around the challenges you're facing, and we're going to look to see whether financial education might be able to address those challenges. So this is a problem-centered, problem-driven approach. And if we think that financial education can actually address a problem or a challenge you're facing, for example, dormant savings accounts. People are opening savings accounts. A lot of banks lose money on that opening process because it costs money to open a savings account. And then people are not using them. So that may be a problem. That's a problem we've seen in a number of financial institutions. Actually, it's a huge problem worldwide, dormant savings accounts. We may say, well, there may be a financial education solution that we can offer that will increase the use of those accounts. And what we then offer to the financial service provider is the opportunity to co-invest with us in a project, and we will front the money to do the project in exchange for a contract which pays us for performance on simple agreed-upon metrics such as increase in balances in savings accounts, decrease in default rates, for mobile money operators, maybe increases in the number of transactions being performed. Metrics that have a relationship to the bottom line that the financial service provider knows that they will then benefit from. Our goal here is not to engage in some long, detailed econometric study as to whether we had success or not. Our goal is to negotiate something that we can all agree upon that basically says MFO merits payment based on these metrics being reached. And then the idea is we implement the project and monitor it and receive payouts on the back end. And the idea is that we essentially feed the pig, which is that we use the pig to finance the project and then recycle the money back into the fund for future projects. And the idea is to create a self-sustaining financial education model. This is a new idea. This is we have one project that we got into the market research. We identified the problem. We identified tools that we might be able to use, and then we got stalled for reasons I won't go into. We are in conversations with another provider in Latin America about doing the same thing. They've suggested doing something on a pilot basis, so they do want to test the waters slowly on this. But the goal is to create this self-sustaining financing system which will allow us to scale, because we're not, the scale is not contingent on grant funding, outside funding, but is contingent on what problems financial education can address as being experienced by financial service providers and by their clients. And so this is the model that we're trying to implement and put forward.